Palestinian civilians are living in hell. Over and over, they've had to flee from one place to another in search of safety. As the latest IPC report made devastatingly clear, hundreds of thousands live in fear that they won't be able to find their next meal. Colleagues, while the world's eyes may be on Gaza, Lebanon, and the Red Sea, we cannot forget about the situation in the West Bank. We remain concerned by the significant uptick in deadly violence against Palestinian civilians by violent extremist settlers in the West Bank and condemn this activity in the strongest terms. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, CDC Rattray, for your briefing on behalf of the SG. Colleagues, in 1950, Ralph Bunche won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work helping sow peace in the Middle East between Israel and its neighbors. And in his lecture in Oslo, he said something prescient, something that rings true 3/4 of a century later. He explained that, and I quote, "The world and its peoples being as they are, there's no easy or quick or infallible approach to a secure peace. It is only by patient, persistent, undismayed effort, by trial and error, that peace can be won," unquote. And this council knows well nothing about securing peace is easy, and progress is certainly not as quick as we all wish it would be. We see that in the ongoing talks for an immediate ceasefire with hostage release in Gaza. And yet, the United States, Qatar, Egypt, and so many of our other partners remain persistent. We have worked tirelessly to facilitate the deal this council endorsed in Resolution 2735, a deal that would bring about an immediate ceasefire with the release of hostages, would surge aid to Palestinians in need, and create a path to a longer-term peace and stability in the region. Colleagues, because of our unity, because this council was able to speak with one voice and back a concrete, realistic plan, there has been progress. Israel and Hamas have now both agreed to the ceasefire framework endorsed by the Council in Resolution 2735. There's still gaps to be closed, and this Council must keep pressure on Hamas to accept the deal outlined in Resolution 2735 and begin implementing it without delay and without conditions. This is what we all want here in this Council. It's what the Palestinians in Gaza want. But these negotiations are trending in the right directions, and we're working in close cooperation with Egypt and Qatar to get this deal done and bring an end to this war. It is also vital that the United Nations and humanitarian agencies have the resources and support needed to surge additional aid, some 600 trucks worth every single day, into Gaza as soon as that deal takes effect. Until then, it remains the United States' view that Israel must take additional immediate steps to eliminate barriers to the delivery of aid at scale. We thank those countries in the region, including Egypt and Jordan and Cyprus, who have enabled aid delivery to Gaza through their territory, and we hope all of them can do more to help meet the staggering need in this critical moment. While we've seen progress addressing longstanding requests from the United Nations and humanitarian organizations, other requests, particularly related to communications equipment vital for deconfliction processes, remain unresolved. We urge the government of Israel to work with the UN to overcome these and other roadblocks. Colleagues, Senior Coordinator Cog briefed us about the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. Palestinian civilians are living in hell. Over and over, they've had to flee from one place to another in search of safety. As the latest IPC report made devastatingly clear, hundreds of thousands live in fear that they won't be able to find their next meal. And so many people have lost parents and siblings, children and friends, including in a recent IDF strike on a UN-supported school in Nasiriyat camp. Finalizing and implementing the ceasefire deal on the table is the best way to alleviate this suffering. We're also hopeful that a ceasefire in Gaza would assist diplomacy aimed at de-escalating the situation along the Blue Line, which is necessary to enable displaced people in Israel and Lebanon to return home. UNIFIL is playing an invaluable role in this work. We support a straightforward extension of its mandate and are prepared to immediately begin work on a narrow resolution toward that end. Hezbollah, of course, is not the only Iran-backed group in the region seeking to take advantage of the situation in Gaza to undermine regional peace and security. The Houthis continue to brazenly violate international law with their attacks on commercial and merchant vessels in the Red Sea that has affected all of us. These attacks must cease, and member states must stop arming and enabling the Houthis. We remain gravely concerned about the fate of the UN, diplomatic, private sector, and NGO personnel detained by the Houthis since early June. They must be released unharmed. Colleagues, while the world's eyes may be on Gaza, Lebanon, and the Red Sea, we cannot forget about the situation in the West Bank. We remain concerned by the significant uptick in deadly violence against Palestinian civilians by violent extremist settlers in the West Bank and condemn this activity in the strongest terms. Just last week, we announced another round of designations, naming 3 Israeli individuals and 5 entities connected to acts of violence against civilians or instability in the West Bank. We urge the government of Israel to take immediate steps to hold these individuals and other entities accountable. We also reiterate our concern over Israel's recent announcement expanding settlements, declaring expansive state lands, and legalizing outposts. Unilateral actions, like the government of Israel's settlement program, are inconsistent with international law and detrimental to a 2-state solution. We welcome reports that Israel will extend the correspondent banking relationship for 4 months and release a portion of the PA's clearance revenues. And we call on Israel to extend correspondent banking for at least 12 months, as well as release all of the withheld clearance revenues. The viability of the Palestinian Authority is essential to stability in the West Bank. Steps that weaken it only undermine Israel's security. Finally, we encourage Israel to join members of this council in supporting the PA's reform program. Colleagues, in the same Nobel lecture that I mentioned earlier, Ralph Bunche admitted that, and I'll quote again, "It's not easy to speak of peace with either conviction or reassurance," unquote. And yet, to speak of peace, to work toward peace, is urgently needed. And it is the task before every one of us in this council, not to point fingers, and certainly not to seed divisions. And so the United States remains steadfast in our efforts to pressure Hamas to take the steps necessary to close gaps at the negotiating table and finalize the ceasefire deal endorsed by this council, to bring the hostages home, including the 8 Americans still held by Hamas for over 280 days, to support humanitarian access into and across the entire Gaza Strip, and to meet the urgent protection needs of Gaza's most vulnerable, to promote regional security, and continue to work toward a 2-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians alike can live in peace and in dignity, and to commit to patient, persistent, undismayed efforts so that peace can be won. Thank you.